Hello everybody, this is Spider-Man 117 back here with another review for Resident Evil, the final chapter. Stars Mila Jovovich and Ali Larter. But by no means do I think this is the worst Resident Evil movie. I mean, is it the best? Probably not, but it's definitely not the worst. But the thing I don't like about this movie is that they rehash and recast people. I'm not really sure who plays Professor James Marcus, creator of the T virus. And his daughter, Alicia, was recast also. So apparently she had a disease called progeria, which is a disease where you age really fast, but by the time she was 25, she'd have a body of a 90-year-old. Her father would record her likeness and her voice. And guess what? She'd be the voice of the Red Queen. And then her father discovered the T virus, which repaired damaged cells so that she wouldn't age as fast. And then guess what happens? Dr. Isaac returns from Resident Evil Extinction. Then Dr. Isaacs had Professor James Marcus killed off so that Alicia would be the only one left with her half of the company of Umbrella. And then it basically picks up where Resident Evil Retribution ended, with Alice coming out of a bunker or out of the ground, and then she goes up to drink some water by the monument or wherever there was water anyways, and then you get a jump scare. Holy shit, whoa. It tried to attack her because in theater I really wasn't scared really at all. Oh, and then guess what happens right after that? And then Alice is walking and all of a sudden, boom, I forgot what the monster was called, but it's in Resident Evil 5, this flying thing comes out of the ground. Not sure what it's called. Don't want to be disrespectful towards it. But anyways, then Alice jumps in a military Humvee and she basically tries to outrun it, and it picks the Humvee up. And then there's a claymore in the back, and she goes ahead and arms it and then runs away, and then the Humvee blows up. And then right after that, then this alarm goes off. It's a little bit annoying. And then there happens to be a satellite that's overhead that spots Alice, Project Alice. And then shortly after that, Alice gets up and goes in this one room, and then there's a projection of the Red Queen, and she resets her watch to 48 hours, because that's how long the last survivors will be alive for. And then guess what happens? Oh, another zombie tries to kill Alice, and she cuts its fucking head off. And then Alice somehow hijacks a car, and somehow she's in the car for 12 hours. And then while she was driving, she ran into some road spikes and then ran under a crash semi and smashed the whole top down and broke the whole fucking thing. And then she had to jump out. And then Alice is sitting there and she sees a bike, and then all of a sudden there's this rope thing that grabs her, and she gets hung upside down, and there's a bunch of umbrella people, because it's an umbrella bike and it can only be operated by the umbrella people. And then no offense to the umbrella operatives, but she's sitting there dangling and she starts laughing, and like, what? Why would you go up and hit her? Like, why wouldn't you use common sense and just shoot her so she's dead? Maybe the movie would end. But anyways, he tries to hit her and she grabs the gun and like does this like 360 thing, and she kills all the Umbrella operatives, and then she tries to get on the bike and get shocked. And then Alice wakes up and she ends up being on this like tank thing with like treads. It's got like a minigun and a shitload of rockets on it, and Dr. Isaacs is in it, and he commands it. And then she ends up getting cast out, and she has like this like like thing that's like hooked to her with like a big rope or wire, and she has to like run behind it. And then there happens to be a guard on top of the tank, and she ends up running fast enough to like jump on something so that he has to look over, and then he falls over or and gets like kicked by her, and she falls down in the zombies. Well, he does anyways, and she gets back up on top, and he gets eaten by the zombies, and then Dr. Isaac sends somebody else on top to check to see what's going on. And then Dr. Isaacs goes back on top of the tank, and there happens to be a bike that's like on the inside, and it pops out, and her and Dr. Isaacs are fighting, and like they keep fighting, and she eventually gets unlocked, and then she like takes the metal rope around him and cuts his hand off and jumps on the bike and goes to Raccoon City. And then while Alice is riding into the city, she sees a light on top of a building, but then there's this big gigantic metal rope. I guess that's what I'm going to call it anyways. And she's riding, and then hits the bike, and she flips out and gets knocked out. And then when she wakes up, she is like surrounded by some people that she doesn't know, but then Claire Redfield shows up, and she's like the head honcho of the whole building. And then anyways, they go to the top of the building, and Dr. Isaacs is inbound with like a gigantic horde of zombies, and there's like 2 tanks that are there, like the rockets and the miniguns. And then they go outside and they mark. They put 1, 2, 3, and they have like these canisters. And when they get close enough, they're gonna fire it at them. And then, anyways, they get close enough, and they release somebody that they had captive. Dr. Isaacs does, and then they lower the gate. And Dr. Isaacs decides to like shoot an innocent civilian that's like not infected, and then the zombies start hoarding up the whole building, and then they end up running up the building and like getting out of the way, and they got these like gigantic gas containers and like fountains of gasoline that can like go down, and then Alice like throws a torch in there and like lights it down and like burns all the zombies up. And then Alice is smart enough to zip line down, and luckily for her, they probably planned ahead of time. They had gasoline, and she goes on top of the tanks, or one tank anyways, and she pours both gas cans down the hatch, and she lights a flare, and they try to close the vents, and she burns the whole entire inside. And then Alice has a triple-barreled shotgun called the Hydra from Resident Evil 5, and one guy like opens a hatch and just gets shot, and then she like goes into this like fight with this one guy, like mixed martial arts, I'm guessing, or jiu-jitsu. But anyway, she does that, and she just about shoots him, but he kicks it out of her hand, and then they're fighting, and she like falls off the tank, and then she's by the hydrant, she picks it up and shoots him. And then everybody that's left goes down in the pit because there's like a gigantic circle around that leads to the hive. But anyways, then some dogs come and they chase him, and then they go and jump in the water, and they eventually get to the hive entrance. And then they enter the hive, and Wesker also returns, and he activates the hive's defenses, and this gigantic like long hallway section like starts closing in on him, and then everybody else makes it through, and then Alice is like fighting the zombie, and it like keeps getting closer and closer, and then she eventually jumps through, and the zombie just gets crushed. And then as everybody's going through the hive, all of a sudden, like they're going through this fan, and then they like get like 15, 20 feet per se. That's what I'd say anyways. And then Wesker activates it, so then it starts sucking them in. And then Wesker decides to reverse the fan, and then like this one girl just gets like eaten alive by a fan, and thought that part was pretty crazy. And then it turns out Alice and Claire Redfield and all the other survivors, like a group of survivors, it's a pretty small amount of people, and they're going through, and then they fall through the vent and end up down in like some pit area with this monster that I'm not sure what it is. Attacks Alice, and luckily for her, she has like dual barreled 1911 Colts, and she happens to unload a whole entire magazine from each of the weapons, and hopefully kills it. And then Alice enters Dr. Isaac's office, and it turns out that there's a cyborg, like, sort of thing, like using like cryo storage, and there's like a clone, so there's like two Dr. Isaacs, like one in the tank track thing, and then one that just woke up from cryo sleep, basically, and he has adaptive combat, like, so he can like sit there and predict, well, combat predictiveness software in him, and he can predict what's gonna happen. Like if Alice tries to go up and stab him with a fountain pen, he could predict that would happen, and he could probably have 100% like likeliness to kill him or kill her. Like it kind of like works both ways. Like she could kill him, but in his head he gets 100%. And then they start. Claire's also there too, and they have MP5s. Alice does, anyways, and Claire has a 45 ACP gun, and they start shooting, and because of his software, he can like somehow like kind of like dodge bullet, like not really like dodge like the Matrix. He just like dodges it anyways, and like takes the gun and like throws it on the ground and knocks out Claire, and then they go down the laser hall. And then while they're in the laser hall, Dr. Isaacs activates the laser grid, and basically it just starts doing all sorts of different patterns of lasers, and Alice is able to dodge them, and then they start fighting, and Alice got a grenade, or she had one anyways, and she puts it in Dr. Isaac's pocket, and then like it like kind of like blows a little bit of a hole in the side of him, but he's a cyborg, so he comes back on life support. But Alice's whole goal was to get this airborne antivirus that takes care of the virus and kills all the zombies, which would in turn kill her. But then she gets to the surface and she's about to drop it, and then Dr. Isaacs stops her from dropping it and has a gun, and then the other clone of Dr. Isaacs arrives with a shitload of zombies, and the one that was in the tank kills the other Dr. Isaacs, and then he's alive, and then he gets eaten by zombies, and she throws the antivirus on the ground, and somehow, like a vial like this fucking big is somehow gonna, like, all of a sudden cure everything and kill all of them instantly. But then it just so happens that it was a test, and Alice lives, and basically gets like a lot of files, and like this piece that she has, because she was just a test dummy, you can basically say, because it just so happens that the original Alice, that the one that wasn't cloned, was Dr. Marcus's daughter, and her life was put into Alice because she apparently became more human than any of the other test subjects could be. And then she basically takes off on a bike, and you see the flying, like, zombie thing from Resident Evil 5, and then the movie's over, and that's really my review. And woohoo, there's a couple more CGI movies, but anyways, I'm gonna give the movie a 4.5 out of 10. So that's my opinion, and everybody should have their own opinion. So have a good night.